Coach Cael Sanderson from the four-time defending champions from Penn State University. Coach, an opening statement.
I don't have much to say. We're just very grateful that, for everything, for the opportunity. Our kids really did a fantastic job today. We knew we had our hands full, and Minnesota, they were killing it, and so I think all of our All-Americans won their last match, and that's a big deal. So it makes it easier as a coach when your guys win their last match. Usually after a tournament, you have somebody that's. We still have guys that didn't reach their goals. Guys that wanted to win and guys that wanted to be All-Americans, but and place higher. But it feels good for these guys to go out with a win, and we got to enjoy it because it doesn't happen very often, obviously.
That was the question I was actually going to ask, is how satisfying is it that all the All-Americans finished with a win today? But I guess I'll ask, how satisfying is it that it was so close going into this final round? You guys were trailing a little bit, and I even saw an order form for Minnesota 2014 National Championship T-shirts before that. So how satisfying is it to come away with that close one this time?
Well, it's satisfying now. It was a long 3 days, and it's going to be a lot easier to sleep tonight. Except we have a 5 a.m. wake-up call to get to the airplane. But yeah, it was a tough tournament. This was a tough year. Minnesota had a very tough team, and not only just a good team, but they have tough kids. So they wrestle hard and they respond, and they stepped up to the challenge and they wrestled well. Oklahoma State, obviously the same thing. Iowa, it was a great year for college wrestling, and we're just very, very happy that we're able to finish it off with a win.
Cael, you had a lot of success, obviously, as a wrestler. This is 4 national championships in a row for you now as a coach. Can you kind of compare and contrast how it feels to be a mentor and compared to what it was like, when you were on the mat wrestling and winning championships individually yourself?
I don't really even remember what it was like to compete anymore. It's just so different. I remember when I was in college, I used to, our Coach Douglas, was stressed out, seemed stressed out, and I used to be, Coach, we got this, relax. We got this. And now, I just see the other end of it, where it's, as a coach, I can't just go out there and move my hands and move my feet and fight for 7 minutes. You got to help kids to, focus on that, and with so many different things going on. I think it's more of a challenge now, for these guys with all the social media and all the distractions, and you have a kid with 40,000 Twitter followers, and that means he has 40,000 people sending him messages or has access to his phone. So it's a little different now. I would probably just delete my Twitter, but whatever. I'm just saying it's a different age, and but coaching's it's just, we just try to serve these guys. That's all it is. It's just trying to help these guys reach their goals, and thinking about how to help them. It's all about them, and making sure they're happy, and if they're happy, we're happy.
Could you talk about the performance of your seniors that went out as multiple NCAA champs, and how much they've meant to you and to the program and to the sport of wrestling over the course of their careers?
Well, I think anyone that's watched David Taylor or Ed Ruth wrestle is an instant wrestling fan. Those guys are fun to watch. Their motion, it's nonstop. They're fluid and they're tough, and they wrestle with passion and fire, and they're fun to watch. They're the guys that you need heroes, and you need guys like that to build the sport, and they've done that, and to be able to finish off the way they did, it's pretty amazing. Yeah, we're gonna miss them, obviously, but couldn't be more happy for them.
You had mentioned you were the one who told Bobby Douglas to relax. Did David ever tell you that? And his dad talked about something on Facebook about 15 years ago today or whatever, that he was first introduced to you out in Utah. Do you remember the young David?
I do remember him. I just remember a skinny little little kid with a smile from ear to ear, and he just was a hammer. You know, you're watching little kids. It was just watching them drill because it was a camp, and you could just it was just drilling more intense than the guys on my college wrestling team. You know, just nonstop, and you could see. I think he was actually worked out with Jason Chamberlain too, who was a really good wrestler and went to Boise State. But yeah, I didn't. You never know. Because it's real easy for a kid with so much success at a young age to kind of lose that fire. But obviously, this kid loves wrestling.
We're joined by David Taylor, our 165-pound national champion from Penn State.
Coach Sanderson, after this year, you're losing David and Ruth, who combined lost 6 matches their entire career. Well, how's the program going to carry on in the future to win more national championships?
Well, I think that's the challenge. That's exciting to me. I mean, I know the impact that they've left, because I think teams are always kind of judged on their stars. So if your stars wrestle hard and score a lot of points, well then you associate that with the with the program. So we're getting the kind of kids that want to wrestle like that. We want guys that want to wrestle like David Taylor. But I'm looking forward to it. I think it's definitely going to be a challenge to continue to to put a team together that can win the nationals again, losing these guys. But that's what it's all about.
Question for David. Just talk about your time here at Penn State and what this final match meant to you, going out, almost getting a major decision victory.
Well, I guess when I think about my Penn State career, I think tonight will be something I'll remember for a really long time. It's just something I don't know about, watching an NCAA basketball tournament. Most kids dream of hitting the game-winning shot or scoring the game-winning touchdown. I dreamt of, watching the NCAA or being part of the NCAA championship and having the team championship on the line and winning, and getting my hand raised and winning a team championship. That's just stuff I dreamt about when I was a kid, and that kind of sums it up tonight. It was just having that opportunity to go out there and wrestle in front of the best fans in the country and have the best coaches in my corner. It's just I don't know. It's hard to say. Right now I'm pretty happy, and I don't think this happiness is going to go away for at least a couple of days, maybe a couple of weeks.
Cael, I'd also like to ask you about Ed Ruth. With the two of them together, everything they've accomplished, but it's always been they're a little bit of an odd couple, the way you've had to bring them together. Can you talk about how different those two guys are?
Well, yeah, I think they're different in a lot of ways, but they have a lot of similarities. They both love to compete, and the bigger the match, the better they wrestle. Those are the big things. They're both very consistent in the way that they train and they work out every day. They train at the speed that they compete at. And that's pretty much is everybody on our team, probably everybody in the country. But so they don't just show up and become the magic man. You become the magic man every day of your life.
But how about their personalities? They seem they'd be so different.
That's a tougher question.
Okay. Could you talk about? Sorry. Could you talk about that?
Well, they are a lot different. I mean, Ed's just real low key. He's where David's the high energy, and they're just different. But they're both big hearts. Love the team. I mean, Ed came back and said after he won, and we thought there was a good chance we were going to win. We hadn't won yet, but he said, thinking or knowing we're going to win as a team feels better than me winning my 3rd national championship. That's just Ed Ruth. It's pretty special. I know David has put this team on his shoulders several times, and that's all I asked him to do is one more time. I know that's asking a lot, but obviously he did it.
David, the NCAA for the 2nd year in a row put you in place of honor in the last match of the night, the showcase match. Some people would look at it as added pressure, and then tonight it wasn't so much. I mean, winning an individual title, but the team title didn't rest on it. Did you feel like more pressure to you, or do you like that spot?
I think there's this, pressure. Coach always talks about pressure, and people think you take it, really 2 ways. And if you look at it as an opportunity, and the whole time I was thinking, I watch all the matches. I was here every session watching the matches, watching our guys, watching other teams, and I was paying pretty close attention to the score because I wanted to go out on top with a 4th team title this year pretty badly. and you just kind of playing it, through my head, and I was thinking it's a good possibility to come down to my match, and that's just something that, like I said earlier, it's something you dream about. I dreamt about that forever. I think I've had dreams about that 100 times, getting my hand raised, and it's just pretty special. I just appreciate the opportunity to be the last guy, because that means people thought I was going to go out and wrestle and put some points on the board, and that they picked that match, and I think maybe they picked it because they thought maybe it would come down to the team championship as well, and it's just pretty awesome. I really can't say much more than that.
David, were you watching 57, and were you hoping that it would come down to you to clinch it, kind of like Quentin had the opportunity to do last year?
I think last year I made the mistake of watching too many matches, and I started thinking a little bit too much about my finals match. And mentally, my mind was going a million miles an hour. And this year, I obviously had the experience of wrestling the last match last year, so I watched some of the beginning matches, and watched the heavyweight match. And when Gostowski beat Nelson, I realized it's going to come down to my match. And after that, I just put my shoes on. We went in and got a little warm up, broke a sweat, had some shots, just relaxed, turned the TVs off, and just got ready for my match. I didn't really know what was going on in those other matches, and 57, when Minnesota lost, it just came down to just going out and getting my hand raised.
And I heard that you had a run-in with a railing earlier. What happened there? And you kind of take us through that.
I thought it was a gorilla that escaped from the zoo.
Yeah, the search continues. It's actually, I was jumping up into the bleachers, and the railing came out of the ground, hit me in the face, cut me open a little bit. A bunch of people told me I was bleeding, and I had to go and run down, and hopefully no one saw. Too many people didn't see it. Hopefully it was kind of embarrassing, but it was kind of funny.
David, you're one of the rare people to have a 4-time NCAA finalist, and as a senior, how much of a better and different wrestler are you now than the first time you stepped up on that big stage?
I think, I was a little 157-pound freshman with big dreams, thinking I was going to be an undefeated 4-time national champion. I thought nothing could go wrong. I gave some advice from Troy Letters, told me to seize the moment, and I think maybe I took it for granted a little bit, did not really understand, think about how many things can happen in an NCAA tournament, how difficult it is to get up there, and I was up there 4 times, I lost twice, and it's hard, winning a national championship, you gotta be able to be ready to wrestle, and I don't know, I think I've just developed some skills over the last 4 years, keep working, I had some experiences wrestling some freestyle and getting some, more patient with my offense when guys are trying to slow me down, and tonight was a big night where I had to really focus on riding Caldwell and getting weight forward, because he was really intent to try and get up to his feet and get an escape. So there were some things that I had to do a little bit different tonight than I haven't in the past. So I just think I just matured a lot as a wrestler and as a person, and I just think a lot was just looking up to my coaches every day, and having a guy like obviously Cael who did what no one else can do. Having a guy like that, keeping my mind fresh all the time, and Coach Cunningham, every day, wrestling with him every day, and I'm very lucky to be surrounded by great, really supportive people, and not only my coaches, they're really close to me as friends, and I looked up to them for a lot of reasons. And if they say to do something, I try and do it as best I possibly can.
Cael, everybody likes to list the ranked wrestlers. Obviously, you're up there with them. Where do you rank David? Not every moment here at the NCAAs have been great. Some bitter, some happy. What unique place does he have in wrestling?
Well, I think anytime you're talking the greats of college wrestling, his name's going to be mentioned. No question about that. I mean, I'm not a historian or anything, but I wouldn't take anybody else on my team in the history of college wrestling over David Taylor. It's just that's the passion, the love, and obviously the skill, and everything that comes with it.
Cael, you've talked in the past about visualization. How did you approach last night and this morning and going into today, sort of getting the right?
I don't remember. I mean, it's like a blur right now. We've been I've visualized and just been planning on winning this tournament since the last year's tournament. And, you know, there were moments there where, you know, you're thinking, wow, we might not win this, and you got to be like, nah, you know, just like this guy. You know, you know, they got to think positive all the time. You have a negative thought creep in, you got to, you know, you got to kick it out right away. You know, I think, you know, it's important for us as coaches to do the same thing that we're telling our guys to do. You know, whatever that means, work hard, be positive, you know, focus on what you can control, what you can't. You know, that's not a secret or anything, but, you know, that's the truth. One thing I didn't really, I want to talk about James English for a second. You know, James English, I don't think people really understand kind of what he's gone through. And I know he took 7th, he didn't win the championship, but I mean, this is a guy who, that he came back for a 6th year. I wasn't sure why, because he's always hurt. You know, he comes back, he's wrestling well, gets hurt in the inter-squad match. Still wants to wrestle. We wrestle in the first match. He gets hurt in the first match. Then we bring him back a month later after he's feeling better, and he gets hurt in the pit match. But this is a kid who shouldn't wrestle. You know, he's going to have neck and back problems for the rest of his life. Probably didn't wrestle somebody live all year, you know, outside of a coach. He kept, as the season went along, I'd kind of written him off. You know, we had Andrew Alton, who we were trying to get him back from an injury, which, you know, he needed more time and needed another surgery. And we had Zach Bites doing an awesome job. Every time James English would weigh in and warm up like he was wrestling. And every time he didn't wrestle, he was really upset. You know, and then finally, when I think we were traveling to Minnesota or a month or 5 weeks ago, and he was ready. He felt like he was healthy again. I'm like, James, you know, the Big Ten tournament, you're gonna have to win 5 matches. You know, you're gonna have to be able to wrestle 5 matches in a row. Nationals, you got to wrestle 3 days in a row. He hadn't been able to wrestle more than a match or 2 in a row without being out for a month. But so I said, all right, go to this open tournament. Coach Flynn, thank him. He let him in the tournament. Said, go see if you can wrestle 4 matches in a row, and he was able to, and so we ended up giving him a wrestle off. But I mean, this is a kid who is just unbelievable. I mean, it's really is unbelievable. The kid looks like a 2x4. He's so stiff, he can't move, and he just gutted out some wins. So I mean, that's bigger than wrestling. Obviously, that's bigger than winning championships and all that good stuff. So that's a cool story. You know, I think. But just want to, but it's a team game. Obviously, and we had other kids like you know, James Fulrath, who was there pushing these guys all along, and Zach Bites, who was ready. He was ready. He was ready to wrestle. But yeah, I mean, I could go on, and you know, James might write a book someday, but it's pretty special stuff. You know, it was over and over again. I just felt like bringing him in and saying, I don't know how many times he was in the office and very upset, and you know, and I just kept wrestling with the idea of saying, hey, James, why are you paying to, you know, why are you paying to go to school again? You know, he's an engineer. He graduated a long time ago. He just keeps finding new majors to pick up, paying tuition and room and board. But so it's a pretty special story.
Couple more.
David, you are coached by an Olympic champion. You were on campus when Jake Varner trained and won the Olympic gold medal for the United States a few years ago. With you and Ed now finishing your college careers, do you guys see a future of maybe some more gold medals coming out of State College for the Olympic wrestling?
Absolutely. I can vividly remember telling my dad when I was 8 years old I wanted to be a 4-time state champ, 4-time national champ, and Olympic champion. Fell a little bit short of the second goal, but you know, the Olympic champion is something that I'm looking forward to now. You know, obviously it's a very difficult task, and just 6 people can do it every 4 years. But you know, I know I have the coaches that can get me there, and you know, right now it's time to just change my focus. You know, wrestling in college is a little bit different than wrestling freestyle, and change my focus. And you know, freestyle is the next phase of my life, and it's time to start looking forward to those goals and trying to fulfill that aspiration I've had for a really long time. You know, luckily I've got people around me that have won Olympic gold medals, and they know what it takes, and you know, they've got me this far. You know, even really it's hard to even explain what they've done for me, and I know that they can get me the next step, and it's just how it is. You just keep trying to progress and keep trying to get better, and that's the next step, to try and get better.
David, you talked about that support system. I looked over a couple times today, or throughout the tournament, you were sitting over with your mom and dad in the fan section. Can you just talk about, and you mentioned this a few times throughout your career about what they provided to your wrestling career, and on top of that, just what that fan section was like sitting in there as one of them during some of those matches. I mean, they're getting pretty hectic at times.
Absolutely. I think one of the things we talk about a lot at Penn State is being grateful. And when I was younger, I didn't probably really understand the sacrifices my parents were making when we were driving an hour and a half one way for practices 3 times a week to wrestle really one guy, Jason Chamberlain. When I used to live in Wyoming, and I just playing Game Boy in the back of the car. I didn't know what was going on. And I just looked at it and said, this is a pretty fun drive. But now looking back and what they did for me, everything I needed, everything that I thought I could do or achieve, my parents were always there, always at every tournament. My dad was always. We were always traveling different places, and I have a really great relationship with my family. And to this day, it's just something that some people, their parents might. I don't know. I have a great relationship with, and I just like to go up and during the matches and during these tournaments. I love wrestling. I'm a wrestling fan. I like to watch. I like to watch Nico Magalutis. I like to watch Zane Rutherford. Jimmy Gulabon, James English. I like watching those guys wrestle because I know how much effort's put into every day to be here in this tournament. So in the past, I'm always the guy. I don't like sitting down in the locker room. I go up and I try and kick someone out of their seat for a couple seconds, or sometimes it's my mom, but. Sit there and watch through 141, then I go down and get my shoes on, get ready for my match. When I'm ready, come back up, try and watch Ed Roos match through heavyweight if I can, and I just like doing that. And it's just, you talk about our fan base. I remember coming here 9 years ago. I was in 2006, I think, when I was here last time. I sat in the Penn State section. A kid from our high school, David Irwin, was wrestling, and I was, man, these fans are pretty annoying. They were just chanting the whole time. And I'd never really been around that. And now I look back and how appreciative it is, and how much I appreciate how supportive they are. It doesn't matter where we are, whether we're on a road trip, and there's sometimes we're on road trips, there's not that many people in the stands, but half of them are Penn State people, and they're always cheering for us and supporting us. And you always see people walking down the street that are, giving you a thumbs up or a high five, and that's just something very special that in the wrestling community you don't get outside of very many programs. And the fact that I ended up at Penn State was, kind of a crazy story, and it's turned out to be the best decision in my entire life, and just really just so thankful that I was able to be here at the right time and be with guys like Ed Ruth and Frank Bonero and Quentin Wright, and be able to contribute to something that not many people can say they've done, and be part of 4 national championship teams. So if you look back, you're 97 years old and say, yeah, that's pretty cool.
All right. Thank you. Congratulations, gentlemen.